Valérie Plante is the new leader of Projet Montréal, but is the force for change strong enough within her to beat Darth Coderre and the Empire in Rogue One? It's time for another podcast. Not quite live from Forget the Box Studios in Montreal, this is the FTB Podcast, the only podcast you're listening to right now. December the 4th be with you. December the 4th, 2016. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Jason C. McLean. Let's meet our panel.
Hi, I'm Lyle Stewart. I'm a longtime journalist in Montreal who's also spent the last 13 years working in communications for the CSN Union Federation.
Hi, I'm Cem, and I'm the managing editor at Forget the Box.
And of course, we're going to talk about Star Wars Rogue One, but a new force for change is happening, repeating the joke from the beginning. Valérie Plante was just named the leader of Projet Montréal. Let's watch a report on that leadership race from Hannah Besseau.
Valérie Plante will face off against Denis Coderre in 2017. If successful, she will be the first female mayor in Montreal history. Projet Montréal members elected the city councillor for Ste. Marie, leader of their party, and the official opposition in City Hall on Sunday. In a close race with Guillaume Lavoie, Plante got 51.9% of the votes. Plante was elected in 2013, beating out former PQ interim leader Louise Harel for the council seat in the Ville-Marie borough. Plante ran for the Projet leadership on the platform of social and economic inclusivity, accessibility, and bold platform planks such as an entire new metro line. She addressed the crowd from Theatre Olympia after winning the leadership race.
So she won.
She won.
Mm-hmm. That's I'm not exactly surprised. I actually liked them both. I liked Valérie Plante. I liked Guillaume Lavoie. I think it was maybe a choice between going with the person who can beat Coderre by saying he's irresponsible, or going with the person that can fight Coderre's bravado with bravado, and I think they went with bravado.
Yeah, I think Guillaume Lavoie was probably seen as a more mainstream candidate. Certainly, elements within the party tried to paint him as right wing compared to Valérie Plante. I tend to think that he would have presented a more traditional politician's face, whereas Valérie Plante does have a certain freshness, and she certainly has a political project to propose to Montrealers. Yeah.
Well, she not only wants to extend the blue line as Projet Montréal wants to do, but she wants to add a whole new metro line, the pink line, going from McGill to, I believe, Mount Royal, then, Bonaventure to McGill to Mount Royal, and then up.
It's adding a new angle as opposed to the kind of square shape of our metro map. But
that's something that we really need.
Yeah. I mean, public transit is something that's incredibly important, especially extending the blue line. I mean, I know people who live, for example, in up by Côte-Verte 2. I knew somebody who lived by Côte-Verte 2 and worked in Ville Saint-Pierre, and he would have to come down to Vendôme on the metro, get off, and take the bus all the way to Ville Saint-Pierre. But now he would just be able to get off at Snowden and take the blue line, because the blue line goes all the way to Lachine, and I think that eases traffic on like the 105, the 90. It makes things a lot easier in NDG. That's what I'm more familiar with. The West End, though, obviously, or the East End is what they generally propose to first, because a lot more people live in the East End, but they want to do both.
Although these metro lines don't come out of nowhere, and like Montreal is already plagued with constructions all around, so does that mean if we were to add new metro lines there, wouldn't that just kind of mean that we're going to have even more constructions in Montreal?
It would be underground, though.
Yeah. And actually, some of it's already been built. They already extended the blue line past Snowden down Queen Mary, and there's even an exit. They just abandoned the project, but originally the blue line was supposed to go west.
Unknown news.
Well, if you notice on Queen Mary, there's that little thing that looks like it's this blue thing that comes up. That's actually a ventilation thing for the metro.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
We learn new things every day and Forget the Box.
Well, that's been an educational experience for me already.
All right. But as far as extending things and doing things, I think big ideas are what sells. Because Coderre was a guy of big ideas, but his big ideas are steeped in corruption. And you were talking about, is it going to be more construction? I think that a lot of the reason why everything's under construction is because of corruption, because of kickbacks, because Coderre's, like Tremblay, is giving the kickbacks to the same people. And I think Projet Montréal, one of the things that's big about them is they're clean.
I think you got to be careful about what you say on air about that until things are proven. But what is certain is that for decades Montreal's infrastructure was left to rot. The maintenance wasn't done. All this work is overdue and it has to be done at some point. At the same time, the federal government is kicking in billions in infrastructure money.
Yeah.
And this is it's a pain. I'm a driver. I know the Projet Montréal folks won't like that, but I do.
Some of them have cars.
Some of them have cars.
I've actually ridden in a car with a member of Projet Montréal. I won't say who because.
But even as a cyclist, it's tough to get around Montreal. The construction is a pain in the neck. I live very close to the Décarie autoroute, and trying to get through the Turcotte interchange, especially on a weekend when the on ramp down to the tunnel downtown on the Ville Marie is closed. So I feel that pain. I really do. But it's work that needs to be done and should have been done decades ago.
Yeah. And instead with Cordere, we're spending money on fake plastic trees, but not for granite tree stumps on the mountain. Which, I mean, I also support publicly funded art, but I mean, like the millions of dollars for something that I think makes the mountain look more ugly.
A populace likes the bread and circuses.
Yeah.
We've got the bread, and in fact, with a lot of this public investment, I think it's helped drive down Quebec's unemployment rate to the lowest it's ever been. Quebec is leading the country in job creation right now, but a lot of that is because of public investment, I would say, certainly in Montreal with all the construction. But the circus part, the 375th anniversary, really?
Yeah.
Really? Maybe he doesn't want to wait. He doesn't think he'll be mayor come 25 years for the 400th anniversary. But spending all this money, I don't know. The lighting up the Jacques Cartier Bridge, it's an iconic image, might look really good.
Yeah.
Does it need to cost so much? I don't believe that. Granite tree stumps, what a stupid, deeply stupid idea.
It's a bad circus. It's not. He can't even do the circuses right. Like he does these. It's like a cheesy circus. I don't know. I mean, I think that he's just so, especially with the Pitbull ban. Like that's something I think honestly, if that happened like a year from now, I think there's no way he would have been reelected.
It's typical of his shoot from the hip style, and that he sees something that the public is outraged about, and he wants to jump ahead of that wave and surf it into popularity.
Yeah. But it's also a bit of a cash grab too, if you think about it. They're finding people for having the cats off their property, like little things like that. Like I think that there's a financial incentive for him to do that as well too. Like if you look at you read all the fine print, there's all these fines, all these. It's a huge. I think like for example the cat thing, a cat can't leave your property or you get fined. Like there's going to be people fined for that.
How would you know whose cat it was?
I think they all have to be tagged,
which will cost money as well.
And yeah, it's. I don't know. Do you think though Valérie Plante can beat him?
Valérie Plante will be very popular in central neighborhoods of Montreal, but where the elections are won and lost municipally are in all those other densely packed neighborhoods, Montreal North, where that kind of ward healer political machine is deeply implanted. And Codere has to be seen nonetheless as still the favorite, I think, and he's got the wheels of cash money to grease all those neighborhoods leading up to an election. And it really depends on turnout. Can Projet Montréal get out its own vote? Can it find new pockets of support? Yeah. Still, Projet Montréal has to be seen as an underdog, but revolutions do happen.
Yeah, I think as long as there's no spoiler candidate like Mélanie Joly was last time, no new candidate coming in, I think Plante has a very strong chance. I think she's way more accessible than Richard Bergeron, say.
Yes.
I mean, he there was something about him. Like when he's in campaign mode, he's got that politician thing on. He's good, but there was something that just people didn't like about Richard Bergeron, I think.
He had trouble connecting with people on a personal level. He's a very fine intellectual, but needed more heart to go along with that big brain.
Yeah. And speaking of heart, my heart goes out to the people in Standing Rock who have just achieved a major victory. And we're going to talk about that in the News Roundup segment.
News Roundup.
So finally, some good news out of Standing Rock. It looks like the Army Corps of Engineers is not going to allow the Dakota Access Pipeline to cut across the water at Standing Rock. It's a victory. I mean, do you guys think this is a final victory, or is this just a temporary victory because it's the winter?
Well, it's the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation that the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, would cut through. The pipeline will still, at some point, go underneath the Missouri River. Which, and if it's upstream from the reservation, that still represents a problem. But it is, in the immediate sense, a massive victory for the people of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And just for the kind of solidarity of Indigenous peoples across the Americas, because that whole protest saw an amazing coming together of all kinds of tribes and their supporters from South and North America. At one point, they had the flags of more than 100 different nations represented at the encampment, the Oceti-Sakowin encampment there near the Missouri River, near Cannonball, North Dakota. And given the level of repression that's been going on there, which is hardly imaginable, people being sprayed with cold water in 20-degree Fahrenheit, like -4, -2 or 3 degrees Celsius weather, where it's snow, being sprayed with water. The use of concussion grenades, which all tore the arm off one white supporter, well, not the arm almost clean off, the flesh right off her, right to the bone. The planes flying over spraying unknown substances. The use of dogs to attack people. This is unimaginable when you compare it with the white militia takeover of a public park earlier this year, and the way the cops dealt with them, which was with kitty gloves, even though they were armed, had cops in their sights. None of these protesters at Standing Rock are armed by design, by strategy.
The only armed person was somebody from the pipeline company going in there to actually cause some trouble. And they found it. They found his car, his registration. They checked it all out. And he was working for the pipeline company, and he was there with a gun.
And so the contrast when you deal with a right-wing white protest group as opposed to a First Nation, and especially given the history of from the 19th century of the Sioux in the Dakotas, this it's hard to put in words that are strong enough to denounce. And so, coming with this news that we've just received is that they will change the path of that pipeline. It has to be seen as giving some hope in humanity. And don't forget that the pipeline was only routed through the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation because its original route went north of the capital, Bismarck, about 50 miles to the north, and the white residents of Bismarck rejected that route because of the fears about their water supply.
Gee, wow.
So what do? We route it through an Indian reservation, and then we send in our attack dogs to make sure that they can't reject it. However, they have, through the forces of solidarity, protest, and determination, they have overcome.
It astonished me. Honestly, when I saw the news update, it said Standing Rock, and I knew that the governor had declared that everything had to be out of there by the 4th or something like that. And when I saw Standing Rock, I'm like, oh God, what's happened? And I go, the pipeline's not going through. Oh, okay, this is good news. This is like that. Really surprised me. Meanwhile, in Canada, we just found out there's going to be a couple new pipelines that Justin Trudeau just approved. What do you guys think about that? But,
well, it's again, Trudeau, one of his plans was to be a more environmentally friendly prime minister, but again he ended up supporting the Kinder Morgan one.
Kinder Morgan.
Basically, so again, we're seeing that the Liberal government, although it's different in some senses than the Conservative one, at the end of the day, the government, like the state, is again preserving the status quo of how the state deals with the big oil. And all those
Trudeau's a disappointment to his dad, who's probably rolling over in his grave too soon. Sorry, it's a joke. There was some rumor that Fidel Castro was Justin Trudeau's father. He isn't. I don't think so, but the pictures do look similar. But Fidel Castro's dead.
Fidel Castro is dead, and with it, finally, the 20th century.
Yeah.
The last large figure of the Cold War. Remember the Cold War? Were you born yet? No, it's which
I've seen movies.
Yeah, right. But Fidel Castro, who outlasted 10 U.S. presidents, but remember, he didn't actually have to face the electorate or the Cuban people.
True.
So, at the same time, had a huge impact on politics as the leader of us. After all, a very small nation, a Caribbean island with, 10, 14 million people?
Yeah.
But which had a huge impact on U.S. policy, given the number of Cuban exiles in Florida, which tend to swing elections in the United States. And
There's also he helped defeat apartheid in South Africa. He was helping Mandela out there too. I know there's a whole bunch. It's a very complicated legacy.
It's a complicated legacy. A lot of people have been focusing on the negative repressive aspects of a one-party dictatorial regime, which I completely agree need to be focused on. But there was also the fact that he was part of a progressive. Represented part of a progressive movement worldwide that tried to resist oppression of whatever sort, and racial oppression as well. And yes, Mandela, of course, had no problem with communist politics, having been part of the Communist Party in South Africa himself before, and the ANC before he was eventually released from prison and led the ANC to victory. So one has to take things in balance, but there's no question that Fidel Castro marked the imagination and the turn of world history over decades.
Yeah,
which is a remarkable achievement for a leader of such a small nation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up balance about his legacy, because in most of the mainstream media that I have seen, like for instance, I mean, obviously this was kind of in like compilation videos trying to show the mainstream media as bad, but like I saw a lot of people focusing on the Cuban exiles' reactions in Miami to Fidel Castro's death. People were talking about how everyone was celebrating Castro was dead, but then I also saw this other news report from Cuba, and they were asking people in Cuba how they felt about this, and the reactions were mixed. And one of them actually said something along the lines of how, while he didn't, he might not have liked who Castro was, how he did his politics, and how he did his governance, he nevertheless stood by the revolution that he came to symbolize, and like the Cuban nation kind of.
They bring it back to Castro in a second. There's something that happened in Val d'Or, which I think is really indicative of the disrespect that people have for Native people.
Might have been good to segue out of Standing Rock into Val d'Or, but yes. You'll remember last time of this year, Radio Canada aired a report on their Enquête investigative news program, which dealt with the allegations of a number of women who came public. In all, there were 37 allegations of physical and sexual abuse on the part of SQ Sûreté du Québec police officers in the Val d'Or detachment against Native women who were picked up or otherwise detained by SQ officers. Some given what they call starlight tours, taken out of town in a cold night and left there to find their own way back. And so this program, of course, had the effect of a bomb on the political establishment last year, and led to 6 officers being suspended with pay while an investigation was conducted by the Montreal police. Finally, a year later, of course, that's a recurring story, and also a recurring story is that once that investigation is conducted, surprise, surprise, no charges will be brought. That was announced November 18th in Val d'Or. I was there in the city for the announcement, and at the press conference by the 4 prosecutors. You had to feel for them for a little bit, because they have to deal with the weight of evidence and whether they can achieve a conviction. And in some of the cases, it was fuzzy on identities and so on. But what remains is that of the 37 allegations brought by 31 different women, not one of them was seen as credible enough to lead to a criminal prosecution.
Absolutely.
And the effect on the relationship between the large Native population in and surrounding Val d'Or and the white citizens, and a lot of them support the police. There are signs going up around town. The police themselves are wearing solidarity bracelets, which in essence says, "We don't believe you."
Yeah.
And when I was speaking with Edith Cloutier, who was the director of the Native Friendship Center in Val d'Or, she was talking how when the cops go into a place like Willie's Place, which is a Native day drop-in center, and they're wearing these bracelets, and the police are there, we are told, to serve everybody. But these bracelets say, we don't believe you. And we can treat you however we want. And it's a very kind of almost a thuggish, belligerent political act, on the top of which the police union is suing Radio-Canada for the on-credit program of last year.
Which is absolutely disgusting.
It's a slap suit,
yeah.
right? Strategic lawsuit against public participation. And so the fallout of this, in Val-d'Or, the mayor actually is very sympathetic because of the economic power, especially of the Cree to the north, who spend millions and millions of dollars in Val-d'Or, where they own a hotel, have other investments, hold a lot of events, huge hockey tournaments, and so on. Last year, after this program came out, or the allegations were aired, the Cree launched a boycott of Val-d'Or. They canceled the hockey tournament there, which over a long weekend, which brings in a minimum of $4 million over the weekend from hotels, restaurants, and bars, and all the rest. And so the mayor of Val-d'Or is very sympathetic, is supporting the Cree and the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec and Labrador call for a provincial judicial inquiry. But the government, the Couillard government, is resisting. They say, well, we'll let the national inquiry into missing and murdered Native women,
passing the buck,
girls, passing the gut, sweeping it under the carpet.
And you wonder why. Like people, there needs to be an inquiry. It's clearly. I think the police need to be looked at as seriously as anyone. Now, there's absolutely no way to properly segue from that into our next segment. So we're just going to say that that's a horrible situation, but a good thing, something that we're all happy about. Completely mind-numbingly happy about is the fact there's a new Star Wars movie coming out. Let's watch the trailer for Rogue One, the Star Wars story.
The world is coming undone. Imperial flags reign across the galaxy.
Can you be trusted without your shackles?
Let's just get this over with, shall we?
We've a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know how to destroy it.
If you're really doing this, I want to help.
Good.
Good. I've been recruiting for the rebellion for a long time.
We destroyed our home. I fight the Empire now.
I fear nothing. All is as the Force wills it.
The captain says you are a friend. I will not kill you.
Thanks. There isn't much time. Every day they grow stronger.
There is a 97.6% chance of failure.
He means well.
This is our chance to make a real difference. Are you with me?
All the way.
I'm very excited about the new Star Wars movie coming out. Jem, last time we talked about Star Wars on this podcast, you had some interesting things to say about the prospects for The Force Awakens. Let's listen to that.
So what is happening, though, is that the entire universe that has been created, based on all these really people who are feeling really passionate about this universe, is being discarded. And I personally have a problem with that. I really don't like that, because essentially, to me at least, Star Wars is like more than the movies. I kind of like the story. It's like that story, it's like a very organic universe that is kind of has its life of its own, and it has been built up. People have been talking about these Sith lords from 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and then there's this entire almost philosophical element that has been added to it.
So, Gemma, has your opinion changed about the Disney own J.J. Abrams' Star Wars universe.
So my opinion's slightly changed, and let me explain that. I still believe that what Disney did is equivalent of iconoclasm, because I still like the stories that were told in the expanded universe, and I still think that it was kind of a weird decision to get rid of all of that. But I do like what is happening in the Star Wars universe now. I like where it's going. I like how they're treating it with some respect, and I also remember something that you said in the sense that you like being excited about the unknown, right?
Yeah, not knowing what's like. When the prequels, I knew I was like, okay, this is interesting. Well, the prequels kind of sucked, but we all knew that spoilers, Anakin Skywalker was going to turn into Darth Vader.
Right. And now, like, I totally get what you mean by that. It's like a whole new universe being like expanded in front of our eyes, and it's good. We get to see new stories, new faces.
Yeah. Although with Rogue One, what's interesting is we're not necessarily, it's not Episode 8. We're going back in time. This is just before, so we all know that what ends up happening with the Death Star plans, they get to Leia, and Leia ends up getting them to Luke, and that's the first episode. Happens. So we know that's going to happen. We know they're going to somehow get the plans, but we don't know how. So this is almost kind of like there's still something new, but this is almost like we know what's going to happen. So
it would actually be so cool if the last scene in Rogue One is basically Tantive 4, which is this Leia's ship from
being attacked by.
Like it's just basically it gets into orbit around Tatooine, and then the movie ends there
with the Star Destroyer coming in.
Exactly, that would be so cool. It would just like tie everything together.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they did that. But I mean, like, I'm very excited about just the look of this movie. It's the real effects, but there's one scene where you see a TIE fighter coming up, and Jen Arso is standing right there next to the TIE fighter. It's very exciting. And I'm just hoping everyone realizes this is not Episode 8. I'm wondering if people are going to go there thinking, what happened to Finn and Rey? Well, who are these people? Like,
well, the thing is, I think one of the things that people were discussing was whether or not there was going to be a beginning scroll.
Yeah, and there's not.
It was confirmed that there was not going to be one. So
shocking.
Because
can it really be Star Wars?
I think it can, because look at the Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Clone Wars. They didn't have the opening title scroll, and I think this is a standalone movie, so it's more in line with that. I think keep the scrolls just for the saga, the movies about the Skywalkers. Like keep it for those, and make this a different type of movie.
It's such a long-running franchise. Well, what about these stories? How do you new nerds relate to them so much?
How do us nerds relate to them so much? Okay. Well, I relate to them because, Star Wars was the series of my youth. I could actually recite the original trilogy, like, word for word, some of those movies. I was disappointed in the prequels, although I still like the Revenge of the Sith. But when these new movies came back, it brought back that spirit. It brought back that vibe. It brought back that excitement.
Why are you two so excited about this new one?
Because this is another. I'm not as excited as I probably will be for Episode 8, but this is a new Star Wars movie, a new type of Star Wars movie. It's not a saga movie. It's an actual movie, and it's at first I was a little apprehensive about these like standalone movies. I was like, oh, it's just like Wolverine Origins or just like something like that. But now that I see the trailer, see what it's going to look like. It's just a movie version of like the Star Wars TV shows.
You're not worried that it might become like the Star Trek movies were? Back in the 1980s?
Well, some of the Star Trek movies were quite good. Like Episode 4 with the whales, Episode 6 I really like, or the Star Trek 6 I really liked.
Some of them were truly awful, too.
Yeah, the one that Shatner directed in particular, Star Trek 5, the fact that Roddenberry even decided it wasn't canon. And completely said, like, no, Spock does not have a half-brother. Like, that is not canon. There's no such century. Captain Kirk didn't fight God. Captain Kirk didn't beat God. Captain Kirk didn't become God, as Shatner pretty much made that movie into. But yeah, no. So I guess are you a Star Wars fan?
I wouldn't call myself a fan. I'm not a fanboy. But I'm not. I don't think there's anything terrible about this form of entertainment. But it's not my genre.
Will you go see the movie?
Not likely, but I have a prediction when I get there.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of predictions, that's actually coming up right after the community calendar.
Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. at Never Apart is the Clapback's first year anniversary. The Clapback is a space to informally discuss everything from pop culture phenomena to divisive political issues, all while sipping tea and stuffing your faces with pastries. The Clapback's first anniversary will celebrate by discussing the new Solange album. You can check it out at Never Apart, that's 7049 St. Urban, Saturday 12 to 3 p.m. Tuesday, December 13th from 4 to 6 p.m. at 1500 Maisonneuve West, Suite 204, is Resist Trump, a December community meeting. This is a follow-up meeting from the November 10th and 23rd public meetings to discuss future organizing efforts. Previous meetings have collectively processed the rise of far-right politics represented in the election of Trump and outlined a series of broad ideas to begin working on. If you're interested in helping organize future actions against this alt-right movement, actions, protests, and workshops, or if you want to be involved in creating Solidarity Network here in Montreal for USA and U.S.-Mexico border area organizations, this is the space for you. This meeting is called on the anti-oppression grassroots organizing framework of Q-Per Concordia and its working groups. The Resist Trump December community meeting is Tuesday, December 13th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Q-Per Concordia. And finally, Protest to Stop the Hikes is Wednesday, December 14th in the EV Building lobby. Since 2008, Concordia has increased tuition for international students in JMSB and ENCS by 35% and 10% respectively. The mandatory health plan for international students are forced to buy has increased 40% over the past 4 years. Already, 4 in 10 international students in sub-Saharan Africa and Central South Asia face difficulties meeting their basic needs. Not only is the president of Concordia the highest paid university administrator in Quebec, but he earns almost $100,000 more than the Prime Minister of Canada. Protests to Stop the Hikes is organized by Mobilize Concordia, the Concordia Students' Union, and once again takes place Wednesday, December 14th from 3 to 5 p.m.
And now, predictions.
Predictions!
I predict that Star Wars Rogue One is going to be one of the most successful Star Wars movies ever to be released.
Well, I hate to be the Grinch who stole Christmas, but I think Star Wars Rogue One will bomb at the box office like an exploding Death Star.
And I predict that over the next 2 weeks, Lyle will have a very difficult time getting down the street as throngs of nerds with their lightsabers will be chasing him. And someone will film it, and that will actually be a better movie than The Phantom Menace.
I also predict that the year 2016 will kick us once again and declare that it will never end, and it will be in 2016 forever.
I predict that just like the Standing Rock Sioux and the Skywalkers in Star Wars, Valérie Plante will be the underdog to come from behind and defeat Darth Coder for the next to be the next mayor of Montreal.
That is a good one. And I predict that just like all the other famous deaths of 2016, millions of people are going to start mourning Fidel Castro, and not one of them can name even one of his songs, let alone an entire album. Okay, so that's pretty much the podcast. Lyle, we can occasionally read you in The Nation, I believe?
The Nation magazine, which serves the Cree communities around James Bay in northern Quebec and Ontario, but is online at nationnews.ca.
And Jem on Forget the Box.
Every now and then.
Every now and then. And so I want to wish you all okay, this is actually a little housekeeping note. This is going to be our last regular podcast of the year. The next podcast after this one, which is going to come out in the holidays, is going to be our 2016 year in review. We're going to tackle the entire year. So for now, have a great night. Have a great time.
The FTB podcast by the Forget the Box Media Collective in Montreal was hosted by Jason C. McLean and produced by Hannah Besseau. For daily, unique, original content covering news, music, politics, arts, lifestyles, food, film, you name it, we've got it. Check out forgetthebox.ca.